Okay, so sorry. So a continuation of what I presented at the keynote. So I already talked a little bit around the democratization of telecoms. Now, what I was presenting before was nice, high level, and sort of fuzzy, and the world's beautiful. What I want to do now is get more real. I'm going to give you lots of specific examples so we understand the reality behind this democratization of telecoms. Now, we saw in the keynote some great hacks that were created in 24 hours over a weekend. Now, most of those guys were developers, so they could code. And when you're dealing with developers, it's a very rarefied skill. But if you can make something that's addressable to virtually everybody, then you vastly increase the innovation, the creativity, because you've got people that basically have problems and they can use technology to solve them if you make those tools available. So let me just give you a couple of examples of just how easy it's become to build stuff in telecoms. So earlier this year, in April, we ran TADHack London. And what I'm showing here is Stephen Sale. He's a really cool guy. Unfortunately, he's an analyst, so that means he lies for a living. But what happens is the big brands pay the analysts to say what they want them to say. Now, they actually do have their own mind, but unfortunately they need to put food on the table for the family, so they say what they're paid to say. But he's a really great guy. Now, he built up a hack at TADHack London, and it was solving a problem around primary research. Now, he's got a young family, so he wasn't able to stay both days. He just came in on a Saturday, played around with some of the tools, realized, damn, I can do this in an hour, and put a hack together, and focused on primary research. And here he is, getting it all set up and demoing that hack. Just go to TADHack. You can search, go to YouTube TADHack channel. Just go to YouTube and search TADHack. You'll find lots of content there. And here he is demoing it, an analyst, no programming skills, building an app that helps him solve a primary research automation problem. Here's another one. Now, there was Sasha and Brandt, his friend. They were UCL students. Sasha used to work for Voxbone. He's been, again, a friend of TADHack for many years now. And they created a hack called Big Bro. And what they do is sentiment monitoring within chat groups. So if you've got a chat room and somebody's being offensive, it's actually going to automatically detect the sentiment and will actually sort of kick people off that group if they if they continue with certain sentiment. Now, they were going to do some coding, and they were using, for this, IBM Bluemix, Cisco Spark, and IBM Watson. But actually, once they started playing around with IBM Bluemix and got to understand what you can do with Matrix, they realized we don't even need to program. They just used some webhooks and a simple node structure. So this has just got some logic in there. It's really easy. It's just basically point and click and set up a little bit of logic. And they were able to create a hack that monitors chat rooms, does sentiment analysis, and then if somebody is being pretty offensive, and it's quite funny. The video, again, it's not for PG. It's a bit 18 rated, some of the things that they were saying there, but it's still worth having a look at that hack. Again, no coding skills required. So this is when I say democratization. I mean, we've made the tools so damn simple that people can build stuff with no coding skills. So there's just a couple of quick examples. Let me give you lots more. Here are examples of businesses that are improving operations through building on telecom apps and platforms. So we've got Aeris. They have a global M2M, IoT, MVNO, and they're using an open source telecom app server, Telestacks. Bank Casino, big bank if you from Europe, one of the largest, and they have a click-to-call service built on a simple telecom API. They did use an expensive platform from, I won't name because they're one of the sponsors, but they moved to a very simple API that saved them a ton of costs. Delivery.com. I mentioned it They use fax. Fax is cool. Fax is still used all around the world for a whole variety of reasons because of humans. And again, they built on top of Telecom API and saved themselves a bunch of cost. Evernos, online travel planning. They now use WebRTC for not just improving communications with their customers, because they do like sort of custom, bespoke travel holidays. So you want to talk to the local sort of tour guides to customize. You want a high quality link. And they actually use that initially with the customers, and now they use it for all their internal communications as well, because they're a global team. HireIQ used simple telecom APIs to improve hiring of in assessing people's language skills, for using the APIs to record calls, asking them to speak certain things, and really speeding up hiring, because you have to, especially in call centers, go through a hell of a lot of people. Home Depot uses it and may save themselves a lot of cost. Hulu uses it in their call center so they can customize the experience. Inuit, of course, were one of the first two-factor authentication platforms using SMS. Jamoco uses SIP trunking for small business, live person. You're going to hear from them at TAD Summit. They've again been doing really cool things in the whole CRM space built on Telecom APIs and open source. And again, they've been using it for contextual-based calling. So using your browser history to route the call. Now, that's been done several times by different companies, but here's an example of a company that automated it so they can sell it to many other enterprises. Pinging was basically a way of creating like an Amazon Mayday for very cheap tablets in emerging markets. And the list goes on and on. And this is just improving business operations. There's a whole host on this slide of examples of companies that are made possible by using telecom APIs. Better Voice. They actually recently got bought by Inteliquent. So Inteliquent are headquartered here in Chicago, and they bought up this company because of what they created, again, built on open source platforms and telecom APIs. Blue Light was enhanced security and emergency calling, mainly on campus environments, again, based on telecom APIs. Burner was a great way of just creating, temporary phone numbers. We had this vast repository of unused phone numbers, and they just sit there, can't access them. They created a very simple way to be able to create an app to get access to them and then to use them. And the list again goes on and on. Roger Voice, enabling deaf people to use the phone. It sort of sounds a little bit, well, how can a deaf person use the phone? Well, you use speech to text. Again, it's built on open source platforms, telecom APIs. Speak to Leads. Sammy, who runs the company over in LA, he's a marketing guy. But he understood what you could do and build with telecom APIs and has built a company around it. Now it continues to grow and evolve. So the list goes on. Textizen was a really cool one in using basically SMS for citizen engagement. So say you've got some sort of a planning meeting as a local council. Well, unfortunately, what happens with planning meetings and local councils is it's basically sad old retired people turn up and complain about change. Now, it actually could be very advantageous to most of the people in that environment. So what they do is they put some adverts up on at bus stops and on telephone poles, telling people, text this number to find out about this campaign. It's a way for people to be able to discover about planning issues and for them to actually vote on it before the meeting. So you can get a more representative sample in local government. So these are just a few examples, and the list goes on and on and on. We're going to pick on a couple just to delve into a little bit more so we understand some of the background, the business benefits, and how did they find out about this? Delivery.com provides, as I mentioned, simple online service. It's about 50 to 100 million a year. It's not like, a Uber, but hell, it's a nice business. And how did they learn about this thing called telecom APIs? Well, They'd seen vendors like Foxeo and also, this is, as you can see, an old case study, but like Twilio talking about telecom APIs, and they needed a network partner with 24/7 uptime that could basically take control of their infrastructure. I'll just skip over this because we've got a Dialogic guy in the background. But they were wanting to move off the Dialogic line cards and asterisks because even though it was cool, it wasn't, because they were growing so quickly, they needed something where they could just move that away as a problem. And that's what they did. They were able to move off Dialogic line cards and move on to using Truffle for APIs. So it had a direct business benefit. Uptime was drastically improved, and they were able to focus not on the technology of basically sending lots of faxes out to fax machines in mom-and-pop stores, but on growing the business. So here's just one example. And you can see they became aware through simply seeing the companies out there talking about it. And of course, they've got a whole roadmap going forward. Evanos is a sort of 100-person company. It's in the sort of custom travel business. And it was just at a hackathon. They met with the founders of Appidays. And they got to understand what you could do with APIs. And they were like, let's go for it. And we're integrated into their experience. At TAD Summit in November 2 years ago in Istanbul, we had the guys presented explaining how it's impacting their customer experience. It's about people talking to people. We see so many of these use cases is because they were talking to somebody in their industry that had implemented. Even though it had been implemented many times in other industries, that's irrelevant. They don't pay attention. It's when somebody is doing something within their industry vertical that's using these capabilities, then they can understand how it solves some of their business benefits. Higher IQ was able to have a big impact on their business, reducing effort by 80% in hiring call center staff with the appropriate language skills. It's a major saving. And call centers are a big issue and a big problem in terms of turnover. They were having a material impact on a business through being able to use telecom APIs to automate some of the front-end processes in finding people with the necessary skills. I'll just finish off. Home Depot, and this is a Twilio example, basically rolled their own IVR application and were able to save ridiculous amount of money compared to buying some of the more traditional solutions. Again, the numbers are all there. The slides are available. I don't want to belabor this, but these are just a tip of a massive iceberg of use cases, of companies that are building apps, improving business processes, using telecom APIs, either just for their own operations, DIY, or for offering a service. And also, there's so many more channels to market than we've ever seen. We went through the duopoly of the App Store with Apple and Android. And yes, we do use apps for most of our mobile interaction. But actually, now we've got this whole drive to application to person. So whether it's Line, whether it's Facebook Messenger, whether it's WhatsApp, they're now distributing and delivering apps. Slack is distributing apps. I think that's the next slide. Here it is. Here's the app directory. In Slack, you can implement apps on Slack. And we were using Slack at TADHack. It was basically the messaging platform we were using. We had a whole host of weird hooks and wonderful things going on. For example, we had a matrix room that was on Slack that actually we connected through to the whole matrix network. So if you were using a matrix client, it looked like you were on Slack. So it was a great way for all the matrix guys to be able to support all the developers hacking on at TADHack through Slack. And it's not just apps, sort of messaging platforms. It's also networks and devices. We had several hacks at TADHack where apps and services are being built using Snappy from Ubuntu. So you can now put apps and services at the edge of the network. You can put them on any device you want. So you can now implement, say you've got a, you want to add in, say a call center in your car. Could be, I know it's a dumb example, but here's just one example. You can now implement that using and provision and manage it very easily using the technologies that are available. So really any device or platform or service can become a way for you to deliver your innovations. It's not just the duopoly of the App Store. So that's, again, an important change that we're seeing. That all these people that are innovating don't think, oh, I've got to build an app and put it in the App Store. But the real big one, and this is just the picture from Etsy, on DIY, do it yourself. You can't commercially buy this. Somebody's built it themselves, and there's like sort of lots of tools and sites that can help you do really cool stuff yourself. And that's what we're seeing now with telecoms, where you can build a ton of stuff that you may have once upon a time had to go to Avaya or of some of these other companies that have died, like Alcatel-Lucent, Nortel, etc. You can do it yourself now. So that's on the empowerment side. Let's just take a slight trip into an alternate reality. I'm going to talk, and you mentioned this, Carol, the telco bit of telecom. I show here an example of what many operators have gone through, because they say, oh, there's all this development tools and all these capabilities. We need to own developers. We need our own development program. I show here a cycle. This is for sort of BT02 in the UK. Back in 98, they thought, hey, developers are cool, the internet's cool, we need to get into this. So they created Genie, which was their development program. It went for a few years, and then they closed it down. Then they think, oh, well, we'll redo it again. A new manager comes in, tries to get a promotion, so we'll do so too. It ran for a few years and closed down. Then they did Revolution. I think that managed to last 18 months, then closed down. Then they did O2 Litmus. They got a little bit better, they actually started paying developers for, sort of building stuff, but again, it closed down. And this has sort of been the cycle for a lot of operator involvement in trying to sort of, chase after developers. I'm not sure why they want to chase after developers, but they've sort of tried and, generally struggled in doing that for a whole variety of reasons. I could give you so many painful case studies. I'll just give you, I'll avoid naming names. I'll skip over that one, but because it's very close and personal. But we were working with a telco. And they were, sort of running 2 TATAC locations. And we had like about 80, 90 registrations. And the guy basically said, oh, it's just too much work. And, and I'm changing role. So just dropped them the week before TATAC started. 2 locations, 90 developers all signed up and just dropped those 2 locations. Only somebody in a big corporation that's completely self-focused would ever do something like that. Most people I work with in small companies take personal responsibility. It's just to give that as one personal, painful example that we had to deal with, but we solved it. But there is a big culture clash. Now, I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. I just show this as an example of another culture clash between our sort of telco and what is becoming, and the internet. I think, I sort of, when I say telecom, I look at both sides of this, but I think traditionally we see sort of internet and telco as 2 very different cultures, and that has stifled telco's ability to harness a lot of the opportunities that are coming out there. I mean, you saw Sven here from up here, and you saw his question, and what's the benefit for a telco? And that's the wrong question. He pretends to be like sort of a cool web person, but he is a telco. He grew up in a telco. The question is, what's the benefit for my customers? And I had to explain to him, look, you take this hack, you show it, your account management team, show it to Carrefour, and then you deliver it across the world for Carrefour. That's the approach. So again, I just use that as that example that there is a significant cultural difference that exists. And, again, I'm just trying to sort of there's all this good, bad, there's a whole host of animosity that exists, and really sort of, Ralph Waldo Emerson, I think, sums it up really well. The meaning of good and bad, or better and worse, is simply, are you helping or hurting? And that's the key. In an ecosystem, just focus where you can help. Okay? Not rather than using the ecosystem to do for your needs, focus on where you can help. So let's wrap up with some food for thought, and then we can take it into Q&A, focusing on maybe the North American market. Telecoms is becoming democratized through open and closed source platforms and APIs. And you saw, right at the start, I showed you Stephen Sale creating an app in just a few hours at TADHack London, and with no programming skills. DIY is on the rise. I showed you a whole list, different companies that are just building it themselves. So your customers are doing it. Discovery of all these innovations, if you are not just doing it for yourself, but you're looking to sell it, is now really comes from people talking to people and publishing stuff within vertical industry solutions. I can bet you next year at TADHack we will have more than Carrefour. We'll most probably have Target and a couple of others involved because they've seen, wow, this is cool. I can see how this materially impacts my customer experiences. So again, going through and helping build these solutions, and it's just people talking to people. We can say, digital media, digital services, guess what? In a lot of this, it's complex, and it all comes around delivering value that people can understand and act on. Covered how channels are on the rise. You've got vastly more ways of distributing your services. Technology is moving fast in this space. The decentralized web will be a big theme next year within this conference, I'm predicting. We've already got it in TAD Summit. We've got a whole range of players coming together to discuss how this is going to impact telecoms in its broadest sense. And innovation really is everywhere. It's not over in just the Bay Area bullshit machine. Granted, they have basically a lot of cash, which does help them. So don't get me wrong. It happens there because basically, that's where the money is. But it really is everywhere. If you look at the hacks that we created across TADHack around the world, they're all world class. And really, it's important to look at this from a local and in-country perspective. There is no, when we're talking about sort of 5G, it's a global thing, okay? And, props to the previous presenter, you were right on. My view is there's a lot of wishful thinking, and it's just 5G is all about solving the dense cell issue. That's it, full stop. Everything else is bullshit. But anyway, back to focusing on this piece. The solutions that we're seeing when we're looking at services are very country-specific. Let's take Sri Lanka as an example. Okay? They created IdeaMart. It's a very easy way for coders and non-coders to be able to build apps and sell them through dialogue in Sri Lanka. They earn, basically dialogue. I think it's now 4% of their revenues through IdeaMart, which is run by 20 people. Okay, it's small beer, but it has a material impact. People are making decisions on which carrier they choose in Sri Lanka because they're going to get access to certain applications. Now, Verizon, AT&T, horses bolted. You ain't got a hope of copying that model. But I think the key is focusing where you can create and deliver unique value within your country's ecosystem. Because that's the thing I see, is telco is very country-specific, and each country has a very different position in this ecosystem. For example, MTN Zambia, MTN South Africa, we had the CEO of MTN Zambia up presenting at a TADHack event. This is a CEO of a pretty big telco. They're giving the time and endorsing it. We were on the news in South Africa. It's unheard of to get that sort of coverage for this weird telecoms thing. Who wants to be, if it's internet, then of course it's cool. But, it shows that it has value. So every country, you've got to look at very differently. So anyway, that's my piece in terms of telecoms is becoming democratized, DIY is big, and we need to look at it very much from an in-country's perspective, because every country is going to take a different approach here. So that's my piece. Let's move on to Q&A, because I'm sure it'll all be North American focused. Thank you.
You're the only one that came through the airport, so
And I did see them as well.
Yeah.
Question?
Hi, Chuck from Cisco. A question about this whole cluster of attributes of networks: reliability, availability, service assurance, trustworthiness in general.
Yeah.
Can a democratized DIY software development, or really service development environment, produce a 5 nines capable service? And if the answer is yes, show me how. If the answer is not really, then why? Then how are these people going to get their lifelines or their mission-critical applications?
Most people
whatever?
don't care.
So you're telling me that nobody cares about the fact
Most people don't care.
Okay. So
for their specific service. What you're doing is you're taking this here and saying this is the only thing that matters, that little thing over there.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Lifeline's there. Okay? Most people have Lifeline. And they pay for it. They pay through the teeth for it. I pay basically for Lifeline, which I don't really care about with my T-Mobile service because I don't have a fixed line service.
Right.
Basically,
You're a cord cutter,
$80 a month for unlimited, basically all you can eat. I only ever use the internet. I know Lifeline's there. I've never had to use it, but I know it could be there. Okay? So people do pay for that little piece. But what we're talking about is all the other cool stuff where the value's being created.
And your assertion is that value is happy with 3 or 4 nines?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Interesting. Let's see if you're right.
No, it's already proven. I mean, look at SMS. It's collapsed in so many markets. US, again, is special. Okay? It's collapsed for basically an inferior service. It doesn't even have the coverage. You can go down, download an app, and it has a whole host of issues. But guess what? It's killed SMS in many markets. So I am right, okay? What you're reflecting is something that's a decade-old thinking. I'm sorry.
But the people that you're replacing are selling that. Verizon is selling that.
Is selling...
Reliability.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's providing a lifeline. Absolutely. And people are paying for that. Okay? But it's been and done. It's there. That ain't new value creation. It's hard to charge more for that. So how do we charge more? Well, have been able to take advantage of the whole mobile internet. Okay? But that's been and done now. It's all fixed price, all you can eat. That's where we're moving to. So we've got to focus on where's the new value. And you saw in the keynote, there was a couple of sort of young people created an excellent hack in terms of enabling Carrefour to change their relationship with their customers when they're in the store. Now, it's not about the telecom capabilities, it's about delivering that solution globally. No problem.
Okay. So I continue to hear you talk about, as I've heard other people prior, actually, the discussion of Verizon spoke of our customers. And you are also speaking of individual customers writing individual applications that individual people around may be interested in using, which is lovely. And we are in a real social revolution where we are changing the way we are porting everything onto this internet. And we're building layers on top of that. And I expect to continue to watch or to participate in the gold rush. We are all trying to innovate, and that's what we should be doing because we don't know yet what the limits are, that what we can do that we haven't been able to do, and what we can do better than we have, and so forth. So I'm not arguing with any of that. What I am thinking, though, is that we're continuing to make it them and us.
Absolutely.
Hang on. So it's the customer or the individual developer somehow versus mom and dad who are actually giving us the networks. I mean, I don't care who it is, but somebody's giving you a network. Now hang in there. Because I happen to be working a lot these days on emergency services, which I still continue to hope I will receive from my society, and I'll vote that way. But the point is, in this case, I think one thing one can say to the carrier, the one who's producing these networks that we're all going on the gold rush in the midst of, okay, so, well, and say, all right, I want to be able to create a, dare I use the term, service. My applications can maybe, I maybe create several applications and they develop a socially useful service to broad numbers of people, and they do want to have 5 nines because they actually want to be alive, and using that kind of service. So it would seem to me that your carrier then could give me the APIs that would, and these were also referred to, I think Suresh referred to the fact that now we can have bandwidth on demand. I may be in a place where I need bandwidth on demand. Maybe you'll give me, the developer, the API. Maybe I can get down into this network. I think what we're doing is we now have to give me the APIs and give me the education so that when I go to learn all about coding in one of those 10,000 places where I can go to learn about coding these days, they don't treat me like an ice skater learning to make the circles, but they tell me what's the water like underneath and how to get so forth. So I think that we continue to make a kind of false dichotomy.
Yes.
It's not that if I were a carrier, need to own the developer. Mm-hmm. I need to give the access. And of course, that's going to take us a long time to figure out how to do that safely and securely. But let's not make the false dichotomies of them and us, even when carriers are us too.
Yeah, there's a big cultural difference there, and we need to recognize it. And what I'm suggesting is, you have to find the role that's right. Because some telcos are in the fortunate position where they can provide distribution. And there's a lot of value in distribution. I think that also we're in a situation where there's a lot of competition in networks. One of the hacks was basically a Wi-Fi. Basically, it enables you to look which is the best Wi-Fi, to connect to. We see lots of apps where you're trying to find which is the best network to connect to. I made a reference in my keynote and the fact that actually I gave up using the hotel's Wi-Fi and I used, mobile roaming data as the preferred mechanism because guess what? T-Mobile understands my requirements and gives me what I want as a customer, and I use it. Now, I agree. There's a whole range of capabilities that can be exposed. Networks are increasingly in competition. I think we saw from Martin, a great example of just even within a stadium, the competition that exists in networks. And there are, I think, capabilities that can be exposed there. Monetization, I think, remains an issue because really what you want is people just using your network because it just damn well works. That's it. So we're never arguing about internet access and providing lifeline service. That's always going to be there and people will pay for it. What we're talking about is all the value add that sits on top. And do we say, it's all lost, all goes over the top? Or is the value that can be made by working together where appropriate given your in-country ecosystem?
Okay. Thank you. A very interesting topic, and there's obviously demand for more discussion, so Dean, maybe you can pick it up with Alan at break. Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you. You're welcome.